Hi guys, in this video I'm just going to quickly show you some drills on how to tackle the international diagram for your first chapter of international trade. But we have to go back to some basics first. So now I'm just going to draw a micro diagram with, the very classic supply and demand curve. Yeah, I'm pretty sure we all understand this diagram. When we look at this diagram, we are basically looking at a particular product in a particular market in some places, right? So now let me just give it an example. Let's say this is for bananas in Hong Kong, right? Okay, so when we are looking at the diagram like this, we are just looking at the banana market in Hong Kong. So in this market, people they are trading at P1 and at the quantity of Q1 right here. Okay, and if we put some more information into this diagram, we can add some more colors. So here for the red area, we all know that is the consumer surplus. I'm just going to name it CS. And for the one below, we all know that is basically the producer surplus. Okay, right? Yep, so that's the very basic domestic micro diagram, only focusing on one particular good. So when we talk about international diagram, it's basically the same as the micro diagram. Yeah, it's basically the same, except you are going to put one more additional ingredient inside this micro economic diagram, and which is some international insight. Okay, all right. So now I'm just gonna repeat drawing this diagram, but I'm gonna put some international insight this time. So once again, another diagram with supply and demand. Right. Okay. Right. But now when we are trying to put some international insight inside this diagram, we can assume now the city in Hong Kong is having trade with other countries. So yeah, let's make it more simple. We're just trading with one country, one another country in terms of bananas. So let's say we are trading with Philippines. Okay, so now we can make some more scenarios for this international trade. So let's say when Philippines, they're trying to sell bananas to Hong Kong, they're selling the bananas at different prices, and we just have to make one very basic assumption. We assume that the bananas that they sell has the same quality as the one that we have in Hong Kong. Okay, so now if we put one scenario in this case, let's say in Philippines they are going to sell bananas at a price which is a bit higher than the one that we trade in Hong Kong, that is P1. So you may want to think about what will happen if that is the case. So, when the price of bananas in Philippines, when they're trying to sell it to Hong Kong, is higher than P1. So let's say it's right here. We would name it PW. Usually for the foreign supply, we would call that world supply. So when we are labeling this supply curve, we would call that supply W. W stands for world, so world supply. Okay, so if that is the case, when the both bananas they're basically the same, so it's pretty clear that no one is going to buy the bananas from Philippines, because when I can buy my bananas at P1, why would I spend much more money and buying the bananas at PW? So if that's the case, there will be no way for Philippines to sell their bananas. So there's no imports basically for Philippines in this market. Okay, but now let's get to another scenario. So let's say now Philippines, they are actually able to sell their bananas at a price which is lower than P1. So if we change this up a little bit, so now they can sell it at a lower price than where we can find the price in the local market. So let's say now is a bit lower than P1 right here. So we just have to repeat the labeling, the world supply, and also let's call that PW. If that is the case, then something interesting will happen. Well, maybe it's not that interesting to you, but well, when you look at this, look, when this is the case, when Philippines they can sell the bananas at a price which is lower than P1, what will happen to our Hong Kong banana market? Well, yeah, it's pretty obvious. You will see, look, if the local farmers they keep the price at P1, no one is going to buy their bananas. Because, when you have the imported bananas from Philippines at a lower price, people, they will all get, the bananas from them. Okay, so in order to survive in this competition, the local farmers, they will have to lower the price. Okay, they will be forced to lower the price from P1 to PW as well. Okay, so you see some very intense competition when we have international trade. But when that happens, you will see something different in the market. So let's get back to something very basics. So when we talk about PS, right here, when we talk about PS, once again, when we look at the supply curve, we know it's also equal to the marginal cost curve, right? So the basic idea is we can treat this line as cost of production. Okay, so let's say someone which has a cost of production of 0, well, which is basically impossible, but in theory, let's talk about it. Let's say some producers, they're able to sell their products at the cost of 0. So if that's the case, then you will see the surplus between the cost of production and the price that they're selling will be the distance of P1 and 0. So which is this distance here. And some producers, they may have a cost of production of here, like right here. If that's the case, the surplus will be the difference between P1 and the cost of here, right? So something like this, and it goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on, right? So that's why we have the PS of this area. Okay, so if we look back to our international diagram below, okay, on the bottom, right? So when Philippines, they can sell the bananas at a lower price, so what will happen to the local farmers? So you will see, look, when the price is at PW, you will see only this amount of producers, they will be able to survive in this market because only they can take the cost in order to keep up with the international producers, which is the Filipino bananas. Okay, so in this case, for the domestic producers, when they are being forced to sell at PW, only this much of the domestic producers, they are able to keep up. All right, so in this case, PS will become this area, and you can look at the price and what will happen to the consumers at this price as well. So at PW, you will see the quantity demanded is at Q. Let's call it Q1. All right, it's Q1. But it's very unfortunate that when it is at PW, the local producers, the local farmers, they can only produce up to Q2 right here. Okay, yeah. So you will see a big shortage over here when the bananas are sold at PW, right? So here you see a shortage, and you may want to think like, who is going to fill up this amount of shortage? And yeah, I think we all know the answer already, which is the Filipino bananas, okay, which is the importers from Philippines. All right. So when you open trade with other countries, this is what will happen. Okay. So the consumers, they're able to consume way more because now you have some importers selling the goods to you as well. So at the end, the importers, they will fill up the shortage. So the shortage is gone in this case. So it's gone, right? It's gone right here. And when you look at the new consumer surplus, now the consumers, they can consume bananas in Hong Kong at a lower price, which is PW, and also they will consume at a higher quantity. Okay, so at the end we can, find the new consumer surplus, which is, which is here. From the top of it, and because now they are consuming at Q1. Okay, well Q1. Well, I think I should call this another name. Let's call it Q3. Okay, let's call it Q3. Okay, Q3. Okay, because when they were just trading domestically, they will be trading at Q1 right here. But now they're actually increasing their consumption from Q1 to Q3. So you will see a huge amount increase in CS, okay, after they have opened up international trade. So when you look at this diagram here, when you compare when Hong Kong is just trading domestically and when Hong Kong is open up for international trade, you can actually see the beauty of having free trade, having international trade, because when you compare the both, when you just compare the social surplus, this one right here has a bigger social surplus. Yeah. Than the one, when they just trade domestically. Okay? So this is the basics of international trade when we are looking at it using diagram. And yeah, okay, right. So let me just add things up a little bit. So now we know the distance of Q2, Q3. That's your imports, all right? And the distance of 0 Q2, which is your domestic production. Okay, all right. Yeah, from different surpluses, you can see different meanings. So you see, PS is getting smaller because now the domestic producers less can be survived in this very competitive environment, and at the same time, the CS is getting bigger because now consumers, they can enjoy more bananas at lower price. Okay, so that's why international trade is actually good for efficiency. Yeah. And also, for global allocation of resources. Well, of course, there are a lot of arguments against free trade, and that's why some countries, they decided to put a stop on free trade, and they have a lot of trade protections, to tackle this issue here. Well, we'll talk about that in different videos. Okay, so I hope you understand the basics of international trade, and I'll see you in the next video.